if we could knock out these 5 or 6 projects around the house, that would really make the house better when it comes to postpartum time.
Yeah, like make it more peaceful.
That piece of furniture is annoying the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Like we really need to fix that house project. You can group some of those together and say, you know what? These are the things. If we got these done before the baby came, that'd be awesome.
So yeah, maybe like asking your wife for a nap is the best way you can be supportive of her in the middle of the night, because you can take a nap and then be able to be awake with the baby when she's sleeping.
Well, hello and welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
And I'm Teresa Grodi.
And we're back with another extraordinary conversation about the ordinary pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. And this week, talking more about the postpartum period and how we're preparing for it. We had a pretty jam-packed episode last week.
Yeah.
Lisa Baldwin, our midwife, joined us. Yes. Mother of 16. I hope you watched that because it was pretty jam-packed. Teresa and Lisa shared a lot from their own experiences. Pretty raw episode. And this one's going to be another one, raw in a different way, because we're going to be talking about how we prepare for the postpartum period. And probably some of that preparation is going to happen here live, because I'm sure we're going to get to parts of our list that we haven't talked about enough yet. But we'll get to that in a moment. I want to remind you, as always, that if you like what we're doing on this show, you want more information, look at the archives, find ways to support the show, you can check it out at elevateordinary.com and join our patron community there. And you can also download the Awaken app at theawakenapp.io. That's the best way to stay up on this show and other shows here at Awaken Catholic. So with that in mind, again, we're talking more about the postpartum time, babe.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't realized, if you're just
quick.
Listening to this and you aren't watching this, I've been like 9 months pregnant for about 10 episodes now. So if you haven't realized,
you're missing
that we record these things in bunches.
Yeah.
A friend was like, when is she going to have that baby? I'm like, oh, it's because we record a bunch at the same time. Yeah. So I am 36 weeks pregnant. Man. My husband's yawning because we're all tired because I have to flip over at night like 10 times a night to keep my hips from falling apart. So we're all awake all the time. It's a nice preparation for like when the baby's waking you up continuously at night. You're at least used to the fact that you're not sleeping. Yeah. So we had the episode that JonMarc referenced with Lisa Baldwin, our awesome midwife and mother of 16.
Extraordinaire. Yeah.
Amazing woman. Beautiful Catholic, lovely friend. I value her so much. And we talked about elevating the postpartum period, physiological reasons why the postpartum period is important and your body expects it. It's not just like a vacation that some people choose to have. So I would definitely recommend checking out that episode. So now this episode is like part 2, postpartum as a couple. So we're going to talk more specifically about how we prepare for the postpartum period as a couple. So this isn't just like Teresa is mandating, what is this, like push presents? They have push presents now where you push out a baby and you get a present. Like, sorry, the postpartum period, like people bring me meals is like all I want. No, so this isn't like Teresa's, I hate that
List
phrase so much. Yeah, Teresa's push present. This is like something that we've learned over the course, and you can listen to the other episode where I describe in detail and in length my postpartum depression issues with the first 3 babies, where we learned that it is extremely important for our vocation, our marriage and our family, and the kingdom building that we do, for me to take care of myself and the baby during, ideally around the first 6 weeks, 40 days, especially when I'm like, there's still a gaping wound inside my body.
Yeah, I think that was one of the themes that came out of last episode. We've encountered this experientially in our family, and Lisa and hers, that we start out the journey of family life not really having heard from a community or a multi-generational, passing on of tradition a lot of the nitty gritty of family life and baby stuff. Some of it, but there's always just so much that you just have to learn by experiencing. But that even as that's happening in yourself, you discover voices of the culture on saying like, why is this taking so long? And boy, I'm feeling really unproductive. And
she keeps asking me for things.
Boy, people are doing a lot, to help out our family. And I feel kind of bad about that everybody's taking time out of their busy lives to help us with the baby, and realizing, well, there's a mismatch of priorities implicit in that rather than this being recognized for what it is as the pinnacle and point of society, which is new life, new people, taking care of these people. That's the point of society. That's the pinnacle of society. The reason we have governments and institutions and schools and that's for people. And so at this moment when a new person comes into the world, it is right that woman be encouraged and protected to be able to have this time of bonding with the baby and taking care of the baby and resting and recovering, and that the community rallies around that couple and their family to take care of them. That just makes sense. Now, we're not all in situations where that happens. Yeah, even when we're surrounded around with people who want that to happen, because we're all having to sort of retread these paths, make new manners and mores. We're having to kind of rediscover this because the culture's changed so fast that a lot of that knowledge, that tradition and culture has been lost. And so, on the community level, we're having to, now we all have these experiences and then we come together and say, we need to make this happen better. And of course the main place that happens is between a couple. So,
yeah. So, and I just want to give this disclaimer, like we are not medical. This is not medical advice. Do not consult us over your OB or your midwife. This is just our experience, what we do, what we've found helpful.
Yeah. And along with that too, let's see, what we're trying to exemplify here. We talk about things through the lens of the virtues. That's kind of our big lens on this show. And so what we're talking about is just trying to embrace the reality of things first and foremost.
Prudence. Turn towards reality. The
reality of what the body's actually going through, what the real needs are physiologically and spiritually and emotionally, and then balancing those realities with, well, then the best you can do in that situation, however, is the best you can do. So you shouldn't hear any of this or anything that anybody else has to say and feel bad because, oh, I'm not living up to this ideal. That's not the point here. The point is trying to understand reality, the body, marriage, family, the baby time, the postpartum time as best you can, and then you, in partnership with your spouse, to try to proactively embrace that the best you can. And again, the best you can do is the best you can do. That's the point. It's a journey. So the best, give it your best shot.
I promise I'll give practicals. Okay, I promise. I'm a practical person, and when I tune into a podcast like this, I want to hear practicals. I promise he will give you the philosophy and the ideal, and maybe some dadticals.
That's dad practicals. Number one, don't make puns while she's pushing. That's just like right off the bat or after. There's like a moratorium on puns. Yeah. 2 months before the baby, 2 months after the baby. Write them down, gentlemen.
Yeah.
There'll be time for them later.
Don't make me laugh when I've just had a baby. It hurts.
Take advice from a very experienced dad. Oh, yep. Yeah, Ethan's giving me the finger wagging there. Yeah.
So, and this, we did take a bunch of questions on social media, and this is the time that we will try to answer them towards the end or allude to them. But first, while we're talking about this like mythical postpartum period, we'll describe to you what our goal is for my recovery during that time. For me, I begin to guard the postpartum period even during birth. It's some of the reasons why I choose. I've had the gambit of birthing. I've had induction, C-section, natural birth that resulted in like the need for surgery immediately afterwards. I mean, I've really experienced a lot of births. Okay. But as I've experienced so many births and postpartum periods, I begin to guard the symbiosis between myself and the baby. even during labor and delivery. I want certain things during labor and delivery. And I won't go into that because that's not this particular episode. But during the postpartum period, what my goal is that to recognize the reality that my organs are all out of place because I had a giant baby inside me and a giant placenta. And now my organs are going back into place. And that the bleeding that I'm experiencing is not period bleeding. This is not just the shedding of your uterus lining. It's like a fresh gaping wound inside of you. And as long as you're bleeding, that internal wound is bleeding inside of you. Mm-hmm. So if you would imagine that on your leg, if like you were taking care of someone and they had this gaping wound that every time they were getting up, they were breaking open afresh, you'd be like, sit down until that's healed. And so my goal is to spend as little time moving as possible and warm and cozy and comfortable and not experiencing trauma from external places like news or scary movies or, weepy things. Like I'm not processing my birth trauma if I had at that time during this physiological healing time when my hormones are going up and down and trying to adjust to breastfeeding hormones and not pregnancy hormones. So basically just like this warm, safe, leisurely in, please watch our amazing episode with Simone Riscala on the virtue of leisure. Absolutely wonderful, but experiencing this true leisure time where I have this gift of a recovering body and a baby body, just keeping this little space. And usually, traditionally, when you look at cultures around the world, it's typically around like 6 weeks to 40 days of just really watching and taking care of the woman. So that's kind of my goal. And so during that time, we have 5 children at home. So during that time, JonMarc is in charge of like the household. And we have a beautiful community that we have been a part of for, 6 or 7 years that we can rely on for any number of things. Like, I think I could ask these people for anything and they would jump to it. So we're very blessed. And
I think one of our goals is to rely on people more than we feel like we need to in the moment. Because that is a difficult thing that we've had to learn. It's like, because you're used to, we talked about this a little last time and we'll talk about it more later, but it's part of our ingrained vice of acedia that we want to derive our sense of peace and contentment and self-worth by being productive. And so that makes it hard to take a sick day or to take a Sabbath or to take a proper postpartum period because you want to get back out there and feel good about doing stuff. And so that even when you're resting, you resist this asking for help. You asking me for the help you need, so that you can protect this time of healing. But also for me, not really delegating and asking for help from my parents or from Teresa's parents or from our friends. We want that for you and for this postpartum period. We want that for everybody. That's what we're trying to work together as a community. That this, again, new life into the world. This is a momentous event. This is big time. This is so important. We want to normalize, the community coming together and really
that word triggers
really
me.
Taking care of it, really helping out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to push myself this time to really spread the love around and ask for help. That's something I'm going to do.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we do this as a couple leading up into the postpartum period? So it doesn't just start, we don't just start this like mythical thing when I have the baby. We're thinking about it. Honestly, sometimes we're thinking about it even before we conceive. Just kind of thinking about my health before we conceive. Am I going to be healthy going into this pregnancy? What's my mental health like? Kind of thing. And what giant things are looming,
Is there stuff that we really should, if it's that time again, and we're ready to do that. Like, is there stuff that we need to take care of that we should take care of now? So that we, we're open to a new baby now.
Well, we were talking about buying a house, And I was thinking like right around when this baby was due, and I was thinking like, no, we have to like do it either 2 months before, or we have to do it 2 or 3 months afterwards, because we really have to protect that time for my mental health. Because I do have a history of postpartum. There's like a scale now of like what they call postpartum issues. I just still call it postpartum depression, because in my mind, it's like all coming from the same place. It's not like a million different things that need to be diagnosed. In my mind, it's not receiving the care you should, that your body is physiologically demanding. And so it all just kind of comes from the same place for me.
Yeah. And whatever the source, the point is like that you should be ready as a couple and as a community to be there for that, whatever that brings to the surface. Because I think Lisa pointed out in the last episode that maybe part of postpartum depression and some of those issues that come up is just, the woman, bodily, mentally, spiritually processing a lot of new stuff, and so maybe there's not necessarily something wrong. It's just that this just takes the time to process, or it might be bringing things to the surface that need to be dealt with or talked about, or, but the point is like create that space so that whatever God is doing in that time can happen. You can be fully present to it. Also, I wanted to point out there too that this notion of protecting that whole time as you're looking ahead towards having a baby. Again, we just expect babies to come into the world, and that's just to adapt around the rest of important life, rather than life adapting itself to family and to babies. And I don't know much about the politics of policies of maternity leave and paternity leave, so I'm not going to speak on that policy. But when I do hear that, it does seem to me that at least what's happening there in a positive sense is that people are trying to acknowledge the importance of society changing itself to fit the family rather than the other way around. That, even if that particular policy, again, I don't know much about it, but the point is that kind of thing needs to be there, that the community needs to rally together for the families.
Yeah, it is interesting. So we have a friend who, she and her other nurse anesthetists were not allowed by contract to get pregnant within a certain time of starting their job at the hospital. And 3 of them did. And what it forced the hospital to do was to change their policy, because they had just invested all this, all this education in these women. Or I think they're, well, obviously, nope. See, we can't even say things anymore. So they had just invested all of this education in these women, who then got pregnant when they weren't supposed to. And the culture had to shift. You know what I mean? Like, so perhaps paternity leave and maternity leave are saying, you know what, this is a cultural shift. We are getting back to valuing new life and valuing the family that's raising the new life, because these are the stability for. And I don't know much about the.
So again, we won't go into, but the point
and actually, this is something to mention ahead of time. So we're speaking from our experience, and we're speaking from an experience of people who have worked to build community to rely on for situations like this. Okay. So we can't cover everybody's experience. We can't cover, what if you live in this socioeconomic condition? What if you live in this, what if this thing happens to you? I can't talk about all of that. I just simply can't. It's not my thing.
And again, that's why our lens
I don't
is always
have
the virtues
the experience.
Here. Our lens is always the virtues here, because whatever situation you are in, you're called to be prudent, you're called to be just, you're called to be courageous. And that's your task. That is your task that no one else can do for you. No one can think it through for you and for your spouse. It is your task as a couple to practice the virtues and apply them to your situation. And so, we're trying to exemplify these kind of conversations and trying to talk about these concepts that we're trying to live out and we're struggling with. But the point is for us all to take the principles, the virtues, and apply them to your particular, you take them and apply them to your family and try to do the very best you can. And again, God knows our heart.
Yeah. And I think, so one of the first things that we do when we get pregnant is we look at your vacation days,
Start
9 months into the future,
Yep.
and how many you could conceivably have, give or take a few for morning sickness or, emergencies. And then we also connect with both of our families and tell them when the due date is, and that we hope that they will come and help us, take care of the kids, especially when I'm in labor.
We're so blessed.
We
Our
are.
families are just so generous.
They're
their time and
they're so happy to be with grandkids and
totally blessed
hear about new babies and things like that. Yep. And I tend to sooner rather than later check in with a friend who is going to organize my meal train.
Meal train.
Yeah. So meal trains are like scheduled times when other people bring you meals. We do it through mealtrain.com, which is why we always refer to it as a meal train.
Gosh, we talk about them a lot.
We do.
They're, I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, if people use it, it's like sponsorship enough, because then people are using it and they're bringing other people meals. Yeah, and I always kind of have in my mind who's due when, in our mom's group, because we're all doing meal trains, and how we can prepare to bring everybody a meal or something like that. And then, so we start thinking ahead of that time. And like we had said before, if there was like a major life change that we were planning, it either needs to move up or move back. And we need to be like detached from, the immediate outcome of that. We've also over the years desired, so this is possible for people to do with their place of employment, like desiring schedule flexibility or proximity or working from home or whatever over taking just the next pay raise up. We had a friend who, when he was an engineer, and rather than taking that year's pay raise, he instead chose to come home for an afternoon instead, like to have an afternoon of the week off instead. So
that may be an option.
Yeah, I mean, your company is really family. It's a Catholic apostolate, and it's really family. They really think about families, when actually you do a lot of the thinking about the families and making the decisions. So, but so that's something out there too. Like if you're thinking ahead about
creative ways that are outside the norm that you can work with your company, your employer, to adapt it more for your family life.
Yeah, and especially now that like virtual work is normalized. Dang it, I'm never gonna stop being able to use that word. So you don't have to be totally, completely like away from your job for 2 weeks.
But you don't want to drop that on your employer when it's happening, right? You want to have that established ahead of time. That if there's that possibility in your job, start exploring it ahead of time. And can that be a possibility? Can I have the materials and the resources I need? Can it be established so that I know that I can do some of my job from home? That gives you a lot more flexibility in the postpartum period to, extend beyond your sick days to continue to work and, ease back into normal life with your family.
Yeah. I need to look at my notes because I'm starting to get distracted by my own thoughts.
You look at your notes. I was going to say another thing about, one thing that we tend to do during the pregnancy, looking ahead, is that we do a rallying cry. We talked about Patrick Lencioni's book, 3 Questions for Frantic Families. And he describes coming up with a family mission and identity, and then sort of running this process where you make a list, you throw everything against the wall. Here's all the stuff we wish we could do, all the projects, all the stuff. But then what's a rallying cry right now that covers a handful of these that we want to get done this month? And typically during the pregnancy, we have a month or two where our rallying cry, we just kind of finished up one where the rallying cry was, if we could knock out these 5 or 6 projects around the house, that would really make the house better when it comes to postpartum time.
Yeah, like make it more peaceful.
That piece of furniture is annoying the crap out of me. Like we really need to fix that house project. You can group some of those together and say, you know what? These are the things. If we got these done before the baby came, that'd be awesome. That'd be so helpful. And so you can bring that together, have a good conversation about it, pick out the things, and then run the project.
Yeah. Oh, my brain just went blank. I love it. I love it. I'm so far pregnant that like I could just stare at a wall and be happy.
Preparing ahead of time for postpartum time.
Oh, I almost had it. Dang it.
Writing things down so you don't forget.
Oh, that's it. So actually, since baby number 1, I'm not even sure why I had this kind of insight. Maybe it's because I'm a historian and like I like to chronicle things.
Yes.
I kept a Word document, just a simple Word document by trimester of things that were occurring to me. So kind of like a journal, but like not long-winded, like this hurts and this was the solution to it.
Like you probably won't remember this until you get here again. So here I'm going to make a note of it so I can look at it ahead of time when I'm not feeling it.
But then as babies came, I would write down like, this was a great trimester to have bought all the paper plates, or this was a great trimester to have started to plan my meals, what frozen meals I'm going to have. This was a great, so like even just like all it took was just to like open that Word document, throw it in the thought in the trimester. And then I had this like forever timeline of like, what should I do in the second trimester? Oh, this was helpful last time, to like troubleshoot things so that you're not just like trying to prep for your postpartum period all at once, Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I keep I'm going to link in the show notes my absolute favorite freezer meal plan. I have never seen a meal plan like this. Usually when you go to like a freezer meal, this is like a housewife tangent. Usually when you go to freezer plans, you'll like get this list of ingredients that's like 40 or 50 things long for 10 different recipes, and nothing ever makes sense, and you're just buying, like, none of the recipes like have any kind of coherence. But there's this one lady, I think it's $5 meals, and it's a gluten-free Costco 20 meals under $150, or for $150 at Costco, where every ingredient that you buy in bulk at Costco has a place in like these 10 different meals that you double. I've never seen anything like it. It was totally worth the $5 to download the menu because I've used it. This is going to be the third baby that I've used it for. And it's so simple and I can get it done in like 20 minutes. So I will link that below. She doesn't pay me. It's just a really good meal plan.
So that's another thing too, right? Like we're looking ahead. We bought our half a cow.
Yeah.
We bought our freezer stock. We're going to work on freezer
when we
meals
buy
together.
our bulk meals or our bulk beef matters.
She's got the kids cutting up vegetables,
That is something that we do. We work all pregnancy through now that we have kids, is we get established in our routines so that the kids experience as little amount of change, but then also they're actually able to help
empower
run
the
the
kids,
household.
Get them involved in, like leading the prayer times or, cutting up vegetables for dinners or being able to do different chores. It's great.
Our
time.
6-year-old
Yeah.
can feed everyone lunch. She can cut fruit, she can cut vegetables, and she can open up the pre-cooked chicken that you get at Costco and put it on everybody's plates. She can do it all. My 6-year-old. Now she has a personality like that too. So my 8-year-old couldn't do it, but my 6-year-old can.
Lucy can do it. They love doing
Don't
that.
name names. She'll listen to it afterwards.
They love that kind of stuff. Some of them need more coaching than others, but they love to do that.
Yeah.
So again, this is another piece of this is that, like we've learned over time, that at least within our family, even before we get to extended family and community, it's like this is a community event. This is a family event. We're all working together on this. We're all preparing. We're all praying. And then when it comes time, it's all hands on deck. We all have our own roles. And then in the postpartum period, it's still all hands on deck. We all have our own roles, but we're doing this together as a family. This is what our family does.
Yeah. One of the questions that got asked a lot on social media, we have a Facebook account and we also have an Instagram account.
And we don't know how to use either.
I'm learning slowly, like over the course of several months. If I cared more about social media, I'd put more effort into it. Sorry, everyone. Like, you don't care.
I care about you, just not the medium exchange, which is just annoying. Anyway.
I don't like to do stuff on my phone. But how to help other kids adjust or how you split your time. And I think that that's such a good question because it's such an overarching and normal fear. every time you are thinking about conceiving again, or you're going to welcome a new child, and you already have this child that's been your entire, like, that has just rocked your entire world, and you love them with a love you didn't even realize you could love another person with. And there's this fear that, like, they are going to be left out. They are going to be upset. And actually, we've never really had a giant problem with this. We've talked about individual little instances where we've had to reassure a child, like, oh yeah, mommy still loves you. And, you know, like,
yeah. Most of those times, but usually it just comes down to that, you know, relationships change. They take on different forms. That's the issue, you know? And I think one of the keys to that is precisely what we were just talking about, which is that, you know, your relationship with your kids changes from, oh, you're the only child and I just give you, you know, all this focused attention, to now more and more we end up standing side by side with our kids, focusing on this project of family life. You know, they're our partners in that, you know, and they're very empowered by that. But sometimes it needs to be more explicitly stated to certain kids, like, hey, listen,
I wouldn't.
This is, you know, like, this is how things are changing, but we're working on this together. This is a positive thing. This is good. This is our family rallying together to bring this new baby.
I wouldn't proactively say something like, mommy's going to have less time for you, or there's going to be, keep I wouldn't do that at all.
Focus on,
but you can do things like, are you going to help me change the baby's diaper when the baby comes? Or, like, is the baby going to sit in the car seat next to you? You know, I'm making it sound like I'm really sweet to my kids all the time. This is not how I sound often, really, unless I'm trying.
When we were leaving the house today, because it's Lucy's, she's the 8-year-old. It's her laundry day. She spent the first half of the day just griping about her laundry. When I came home, she was at the last stage of her load of laundry, and she was folding it, and she didn't want to do it, whatever. But I came in and I was trying to be proactive and compliment her, because she was, when she was doing it, she was folding the napkins very beautifully. She was folding the towels very beautifully. And I started to compliment it on her and chat with her about it. And a few minutes into it, I mean, she was showing me how to do it, and she was correcting my form, you know, folding the napkins, whatever, you know. And again, so we have the relationship has changed, and she has to now participate in a different way in the household. But you can affirm them in that and invite them up into that. And that's something very special to them. And it sometimes takes some time, but when it clicks for them, they light up. And ultimately that's what you want to give them as a parent. Again, your role as a parent is not to spoil them with, you know, all this never ending, you know, affection in the same way as when they were 2. It's that, no, you're helping them grow to be their own virtuous person. And so that's the next stage of the relationship, when you're inviting them up into this project. And so this is a great time for that, because there are all kinds of roles, and there are roles that they can step up into and feel just really awesome. Being a part of it. Yeah.
And we definitely also take care to get the kids sleeping. Whatever the sleep scenario is for the older kids. I remember thinking when we had 2, and I was reading several books a night to our 2-year or almost 2-year-old. And I just had this thought one day, like, she's not going to get this anymore. And I don't want her to blame the baby. Like, I don't want this change to occur when the baby comes. So I remember, like, I had to reduce the number of books, and then eventually work towards, you can have a book in your playpen, because she was sleeping to playpen at that point. And she's like, you can have a book in your playpen, but mommy's going to go lay down now. And so, like, the transition was not occurring like when the baby came. So that is something that we do kind of ahead of time. We kind of look at the places where and again, this is turning towards reality. The reality is that there is going to be an amount of time, whether it's just the amount of time that you're in the hospital, if that's how you choose to do it, or if it's, you know, the amount of time that you give yourself afterwards in the postpartum period, where you're not taking an active role in the household. The reality is, at some point, that kid is not going to have you for bedtime, or they're not going to have you for special cuddle time, or they're not, you know, grandma's going to be there, or somebody else is going to be there. And that is going to be reality. And my thought is, I don't want them to blame all of this on the baby. I don't want them to start becoming resentful. So we're kind of working towards the new sleep thing, or we're working towards new, more sustainable affection habits. You know what I mean? With the reality that, like, I'm going to be out of commission. And it doesn't mean I can't hug them, but it might mean I'm going to hug them for 30 seconds and then they're going to go back to grandma or daddy.
Yeah, and this is, this is just part of family life. This is part of married life, right? You had different relationship habits before you had kids, and then you had kids, and then you had to figure out, okay, well, we still have to build and nurture our relationship, but that's going to mean new habits. It's going to mean asking for help in different ways. It's going to be so that, again, just being proactive about that, I think, is one of the keys here, because it's hard to come up with that plan or build that airplane while it's in flight. So you want to kind of have worked toward a plan beforehand.
I hate to give a craft, but I'm not a crafty person. Like, we don't have art in our homeschool. We don't have science. No, we have science. We don't have science that I have to put any kind of laboratory effort into. Okay, so I'm just not this kind of person. But I actually do. I have done this since our first was welcoming the second. Okay, but I make these little labor goodie bags for the kids that has some kind of wonderful candy that they want, like something wonderful and sugary. And this time of year, usually I am giving birth in August. Now I'm giving birth in March. So I'm going to put hot chocolate in a little hot chocolate packet, something they don't normally get.
Nice.
And then I write each child like an individual letter about how proud I am of them and how I can tell that they're going to be a good big brother and sister. And maybe I think I've put stickers in there or puzzles or something, something really small that gives them something to do with grandma and they do look forward to it. They asked about it this time. They're like, are we going to get those bags of candy again? I'm like, we'll have to see. But I think that's like the added, I'm so proud of you. You have grown so much in this last year. I can tell that you're going to be affectionate with this baby, or I can tell that you're going to be a big, whatever, individual to the kid, what I've observed in them. Yeah. So I do that.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Because it'd be very easy to get into the postpartum period and recognize, okay, things aren't going perfectly, because they're never going to go perfect. And then and wish you had better time and context to say some of those things. Well, you can be proactive with that and say some of them ahead of time. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that was one question.
Cool.
Should we go questions?
I guess. Yeah,
okay, so this is a good one too, like the baptism, when to have it. I'm not going to tell you when to have the baptism for your child, okay? If it were up to me, I would have the baptism immediately, okay? We'd call the priest that night and be like, get over here and baptize my baby. I'm still in bed. We haven't cut the umbilical cord yet. No, but because you have to care, because I want to care for myself, and because the church exempts ill people and people who are caring for ill and caring for children to be exempt. And I guarantee you, if you were to look through history, peasant history, salt of the earth, Catholic peasantry, you would likely have someone taking a baby to be baptized, or a priest coming to a house. If the baby was going to be baptized immediately, if not, they would probably wait until the woman's 40 day. I mean, that's what the presentation in the temple was. You would probably wait until the traditional time that a woman could leave her house again, or she just wouldn't be at the baptism. So, I mean, there are these cultural realities that exist in history. The church gives us exemptions. So that's at your own discretion. But I don't unless there's an emergency, I don't typically feel comfortable with me doing anything social before a month is out.
Which is a slippery slope. I mean, because you tend to want to jump back into things too quick, and you do one thing, and you want to schedule two things, and so we're trying to err more on the side for you this is the contemplative time. We're going to take longer than maybe you'd otherwise prefer.
And I've balked at the churches. It's so funny because you're so sophomorish when you have your conversion. You hunger for knowledge about the church, and you fill all the knowledge in your brain, and then you become really judgy, and I've balked about the church's exemptions, and I've tried to muscle through them in pregnancy or breastfeeding, especially breastfeeding, because you feel like, well, I'm not pregnant. Of course I can.
Fasting.
Yeah, fasting or even attending mass if your spouse is sick and you've got a ton of little kids and there's no babysitting available at mass. It's just what the heck am I going to do? everybody's kids have different temperaments and are different levels of crazy. So it's like I have balked at those things, and a lot of times God has given me my just desserts. Let me just tell you, for not being obedient or not accepting the gift, the very wise gift that the church gives in exemptions. And I've had some really sucky things occur when I have not obeyed the church.
Well, that's
or I've thought myself higher than the exemptions. Like where is that red underlining in the catechism that tells you what's for the sissy Catholics and what's for the, you know what I mean? Like we think that way. We're like, this is for the silly Catholics because the church has to be diplomatic and do this, but I'm a real Catholic. So I'm going to do whatever I want.
This notion of obedience is, I think, a really important one here. I'm talking about the postpartum period. Because again, we talk a lot on the show about prudence here, which if you take seriously this duty to be prudent, this first virtue of prudence, which is to turn to reality and to, in a sense, obey God through reality by attending to the way things actually are. Then, for instance, with the postpartum period, we've talked a little bit about this in the last episode, but the obedience and prudence in this period means that I really attend to the reality of the need to recover, the need to rest, whatever, and that's not the church making an exception for me and my weakness. No, this is me obeying God's design here. If you are sick, if you're sick and it's imprudent for you to go to church on Sunday, the church isn't making some concession for you because you're weak. No, you are obeying God by doing the prudent thing. Whatever you do should be prudent. If it really is prudent for you to go to Mass because there's no barrier today, then do it. But if there is some actual impediment, then it's not just that you do it, but you begrudgingly and you feel kind of bad about it. No. If you're being prudent, be prudent. And it's important to have that in your mind this time period, because again, it's so easy to get in this time period and feel, oh, I'm not being productive enough, or it's been too long, or whatever. You need to set those feelings aside and say, no. We had a plan, and my body needs to recover, and this is how I obey God, by being obedient to this reality of this process.
I was almost dizzy when I took a shower yesterday. Probably means I shouldn't go to Mass tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, why would I think that? Sometimes you'll get people in the same breath who will say, I could never ask someone to take care of me in the postpartum period or to watch my kids. Like I could never find it. I don't know people that well. And then you're like, well, should your husband stay home and like you just had a baby, stay home and watch the kids because he's exempt from, by canon law? Oh, well, you can always find someone to watch your kids. And you're like, either we can find somebody to watch our kids to take care of the invalid, or, you know what I mean? Like the standards change based truly on scrupulosity. And again, I've been there. I've been this contradictory thinking person where I felt super bad for asking people to help me. But then I've been like, well, I just had a C-section. I've got to get myself to Mass this next weekend. Like it's
yeah, it's always this switch from kind of this pulling back and kind of with a fundamentalist sort of mindset on trying to keep myself safe within the rules, versus turning outward and saying, no, Lord, I want to do the very best that I can for you. I want to be the most generously obedient and prudent and just that I can. And when most of the time that means, I go to Mass. I'm obligated to do that. I'm going to do that joyfully. But then when you send me a sick day, or when you send me a postpartum period, and I really ought, and I'm receiving, it is your will for me, that I ought to respect this time and take it. I'm going to do that joyfully. But it's this turning outward and positively doing, responding to reality rightly and joyfully as best you can. And no one can discern that but you. Like, you have to discern that with your spiritual director and your spouse. No one can make the prudent choice for you. You have to discern it, and you have to.
Talking about one of the things that I didn't do that I should have done, that now I am forced to do because it's now the medical thing that occurs when I'm pregnant, is that I refused not to kneel for a really long time when I was pregnant, because I'm just like, no, I know that Jesus is there. I know what this is, and I will not put my butt on that pew. Okay, baby number 3 comes, and right where I kneel, right exactly where my veins curl, where I kneel, is where I have these horrific varicose veins when I'm pregnant. Like, very painful. Like, if I kneel, it's like a tourniquet. Okay. So now, as soon as I'm pregnant, as soon as I feel those veins begin to like soften or whatever, I don't know if you have varicose veins and you've been pregnant, you can almost tell like immediately when the hormones start. Like, it's one of my first signs of pregnancy, actually, is I can feel my varicose veins. So it's like the whole pregnancy, I have to suck it up and just sit on the pew, because I can't risk a blood clot. I can't, like, I will make them worse. And so I'm just didn't obey the church. I thought I was better than that. I thought if I didn't kneel, everyone would believe I didn't believe in the Eucharist. You know what I mean? And now it's just like, well, I can never kneel when I'm pregnant. So it's just this, we have to be prudent. Mm-hmm. I was making a decision out of fear. I was making a decision out of pride, out of vanity, maybe not pride, but vanity. What other people around me were thinking about my interior, my soul, the state of my soul.
Rather than, Lord, how can I do your will the very best that I can right now?
Yeah. Now
the way that you want me to. Yeah.
The last few masses, because our church is too hot, because it's the middle of winter and I'm pregnant and my church, it's just too hot for me. Mm-hmm. I've spent like from the start of the liturgy of the word until I can hear the Eucharistic prayer starting in the basement where it's cooler, or standing outside in the snow, because I can just tell like my body's starting to swell, or I'm getting like really uncomfortable. It's too hot. My face is getting all red. So
we got far afield from the baptism question, but the point is,
the point is that I'm not going to tell you when to baptize your baby, but at the same time, like, the church gives exemptions,
and the church is wise.
Yeah.
The church isn't just, anyway, we've beat that horse dead.
Sorry. Well, we have long form discussions here.
Very dead horses.
So these are 2 similar questions,
okay.
But that I want to attack in kind of a different way. So let's start out with the spouse as an equal partner. Like, I saw this a lot, like, where, well, if I'm going to be up, he's going to be up doing something too. Like, if I'm going to be up nursing the baby, he's going to be up doing something too. Or he doesn't understand how much I do, so I need to enforce this thing on him. When we see this in NFP, it sounds really cute when you're like, oh, it sucks to get up every morning and take your temperature at the same time every day. So you need to wake him up, and he keeps the thermometer on his side and he'll put it in your mouth, and then you take your temperature and he writes it down. But that doesn't last for a long time before you both want to kill each other out of resentments.
Like, let's make it sort of ahead of time. Let's let's take all the virtue out of it and just like put it on paper.
So like, I don't think the equal, and actually we're going to have an upcoming episode on sharing the mental load of housekeeping. What is it? Homemaking. With Haley Stewart. But I see this in a similar way, where like you're trying to equally somehow arbitrarily divide your
equality again. So this is going to get into a tangent here about society, but like we praise liberty and equality as these high values, but they are secondary values that we protect in order to protect people, but they're not the ultimate thing. Like, equality is not the ultimate thing. Equality is what you do to protect people, but beyond and behind equality is everybody's individual uniqueness and everybody's individual strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And so equality is a protection. And so in this case, again, you have people speaking out of a place of woundedness, where they haven't been, maybe they weren't taken care of the way they ought to have been taken care of,
or a fear of future woundedness.
And so it's trying to use this sort of artificial equality to try to fend that off. But ultimately, I mean, it should be that both spouses are trying to give prudently in every way that they can, and for a mom who's recovering, that is, accepting the contemplative mode, of,
actually,
of recovering and resting.
Lisa talked about this in the first part 1 postpartum episode, where she was talking about how like you can be every pregnancy I'm resentful in the middle of the night. It happens even though I know, like, why does he get to sleep? His useless nipples. There is that, it's there, but it's like, he's going to wake up and he's going to take care of 5 children tomorrow, and he's going to do all the house cleaning and whatever. And I would rather have him like be on the ball with that, so that I don't have to worry, or I don't have to hear things and want to come out and take care of stuff. And just kind of like resting in in that moment with the baby.
We also don't have one standard thing. Like we've changed it many times, tried different arrangements, different strategies, that worked, or they didn't work. And then we said, okay, this isn't working. We need to make a new plan.
Yeah.
So then we came up with a new plan of how we could both give the very best ways we could.
Yeah. So the answer to this question is watch for the episode with Hallie Stewart, where we will talk more eloquently about like sharing the mental burden of homemaking.
It's a much bigger issue here.
So it's not just one that, I mean, perhaps you can get accustomed to your new spouse in a new situation by truly arbitrarily dividing tasks, but I don't think that can exist very long without getting both partners getting resentful and burned out.
And again, this is something to prepare for ahead of time. Like it's hard to do that charitably and constructively when you're in the midst of the real difficult times. Like you want to be working during pregnancy on your intimacy and your communication and your teamwork ahead of time. Like, you get pregnant. I mean, that is the time to go in. This is game time. Like we need date nights. We need to lay out our family mission. We need to be doing a rallying cry.
Allow arguments to occur.
Yeah, you need to get it out there and get on the This is a great time for take our staycations. Sometimes when you're pregnant, because it's like let's get away and let's remember why we got married, and let's get excited, and let this be a team. Any of the ways that we've let dysfunction creep in, let's get that out there now, so that we're ready for the inevitable difficulties of the postpartum time. So that we're ready to give ourselves generously. Let's go beyond equality, at those times. I want to give more generously in the places that it makes prudent sense to do so. Totally.
So the similar question that you're talking about now is best strategies for him to be supportive of you if like he has useless nipples and he's not going to nurse the baby in the middle of the night, and we don't change diapers at night.
Oh, yeah.
My heavens. Just... If you talk to a mom with 5 or more kids, she doesn't change diapers at night, because newborn poop doesn't do anything. It's not going to hurt them. They'll be fine. Keep them swaddled, teach them to sleep, just nurse them, put them down. Yeah. So there's not even diapers for him to change in the middle of the night. So something that I did realize with our first home birth is that there's no one there to watch the baby at night. Because a lot of times when you've been up 24 hours laboring and delivering, you have this rush of adrenaline the next day, and like you can't sleep, and you're just like happy and joyful and like in the moment. And then nighttime comes, and he's been up all day with the kids, and you've been up all day because you're really wired. And then like you're like, I can't give him this baby because he's gonna fall asleep with the baby. And so you're just like, I'm alone, So
planner this time too.
Well, so me problem solving this area, this time, is that I want to make sure that you nap either while I'm in the early stages of labor or like that day. I want to make sure that somebody keeps our kids instead of having them all come back, and you nap, so that if in the middle of the night I just can't handle the baby, that you can come and take the baby, and I won't be thinking like he's just gonna fall asleep with the baby in his arms. So yeah, maybe like asking your wife for a nap is the best way you can be supportive of her in the middle of the night, because you can take a nap and then be able to be awake with the baby when she's sleeping. But I mean, so communicating needs and issues, and like maybe if you've had a birth before, thinking about the thing, things I think about, and then troubleshooting them for the future.
Yeah. And we've said it before,
keep that
too,
Word document
something
for the postpartum trimester.
We learn, then we forget, and we learn over and over again, and sometimes we have to review some of our own shows to remember this point. It's just that, the world looks bleak. Life looks really overwhelming. The calendar looks too full. The house looks unmanageable when you're not a team, when you've kind of fallen out of sync. But as soon as when you make proactive efforts to sync back up and you're a team again as a couple, suddenly a lot of the clouds clear, and the stuff's still difficult, but it's manageable. Because you can attack it piece by piece and figure out the best way together. And God's with you. That's the thing too, is that it's so easy when you're isolated, when you've allowed yourself to, as a couple, to kind of pull apart and be on two separate tracks of life, and you're isolated because of that. It's easy to stop having faith and hope in God that He's really guiding you, and you're nothing's happening in your life that's a surprise to Him, and you have to keep that in mind, that this is all manageable, it's all surmountable, but you have to be doing it as a team.
And I think that this is probably hard for first-time parents because you are still living two individual lives, and the baby, even if you've had great retreat experiences and stuff like that and decent communication, like we've always had really decent communication. Yawning?
No. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's okay. We're neither of us are getting sleep, like I said before. It is going to be, it's going to be a challenge in your communication, your first baby, because everything is getting thrown up in the air. Yeah. There's all kinds of feelings and thoughts you have never had before. You never thought you would have. You never thought you'd have to. And your wife could act really crazy. That is a reality. I even surprise myself and how great, like right now, this pregnancy, like I'm so weepy. Like everything is this huge, horrible thing that I'm weeping over. And that's not normal for me in a pregnancy. It's more normal in my girl pregnancies. But like I seem crazy to myself, and you've been through it enough times that I probably don't seem crazy. I just seem pregnant. But like when you haven't been pregnant before and you haven't been postpartum before, like it's like, who did I marry? This person is insane. She's never going to be the person I married before. And there's just all these feelings happening, and just knowing that these things are going to happen and your communication is going to change. That's just really helpful to know, and to not be prideful about. Like, it's easy to hear people say this and be like, no, it's not going to be us. We are going to be so prepared for this that we are going to experience no stress, but that's not reality. The stress will come. And I think, in my experience, we've been better for it. Yeah. Especially because it forces fights. It forces us to say things that like need to be said. Yes.
Got more?
I do. So I guess just talking a little bit about, a large number of people wanted us to make distinctions between like postpartum depression and anxiety and stuff like that. I can't make clinical distinctions, but I think your best bet is giving your body what it's expecting physiologically, psychologically in that postpartum period. And that's our goal. Yeah. I've been through really, really scary postpartum times. And I know it was very bewildering to you. And just like, this is why we go through such care and through such strategy and through such planning to make sure that, because I'm an investment. I don't want to be the kind of mom that I was during those postpartum depression times. I want to be the me I know. You know what I mean? And I think that the very first and most basic thing you can do is to allow for healing. Yeah,
and it's like you and Lisa talked in the last episode about preparing in the sense of the way we're talking about today, on trying to really give that postpartum period its very best shot. Preparing as a couple, preparing as a family, as an extended family, as a community, to try to give, allow it to be embraced fully, but then also preparing. It's plan for the best, prepare for the worst. Plan for the very best postpartum period you can, but then also have the breastfeeding consultant person on
Yeah.
on dial, and the NAPRO doctor person on dial, and be prepared, but try to rule out as many of the variables as you can.
Yeah. I mean,
but then
even
be
if,
ready to ask for help as you need help. Yeah.
if you have something like a NICU stay, which is something we've never experienced, even just knowing these things ahead of time, knowing that my body does need to rest, and sometimes hospitals do put really difficult restraints on women who should not, on women who should not even be moving. Not even be standing up other than to go to the bathroom, and so it's like knowing what you need may help you advocate in that position, or think creatively in that position. Like, who can I call if I needed someone else to feed my family for a week? Who can I call if I needed, somebody else to watch my kids? Maybe it's the woman who doesn't have any grandkids yet, who has said to you at church, let me know if you need anything. Yeah. And then you're just like, I could possibly call her and just tell her my situation, and she could, maybe she'll help me, or maybe she'll know somebody, or maybe there'll be a group of grandmas who want to come and watch my kids, so that I can stay put and I can be near that baby, and I can be experiencing the hormones that I need to be experiencing. And you know what I mean? So just thinking about these things ahead of time is very helpful. And something I do, and I'm really careful about. Sorry, I promised practicals. We're at an hour, and I don't want to go too much farther than an hour. But I do want to go through a few practicals.
And let me just say quickly that, again, this is a time, we're going to get into the practicals, but this is, and all that we've said, this is a time and an opportunity. Like everything is a time and an opportunity to grow in virtue. And it's probably a time to grow in the virtues that you're lacking. So, if your proclivity is to try to derive your self-worth from being productive, as a woman, this is the time to plan ahead with your spouse, be proactive, and try to embrace leisure, try to embrace rest in God, the contemplative mode rather than the active mode. Get good at
your Sabbaths.
If as a husband, you tend to just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and let life happen to your family, this time before the baby happens is the time to get proactive and be a leader and lead your family in making a plan. This is like everything we experience is an opportunity for virtue, but by looking ahead and making a plan, we can be more prepared to receive the graces God wants to give us through this time. Yeah. So practicals. Okay. So, some ideas here.
I mentioned this in the last episode, but I set arbitrary mental time limits of like, at 2 weeks, I'm going to feel amazing, and I'm going to want to get back into the swing of things and start cooking and start doing things. But I'm going to say to myself, danger, like this is your 2 week danger zone. Your bleeding could start open again, and you could start feeling postpartum depression, clenching and things like that. So be careful. And then I also, I set another one for like 2 months, like don't care about anything. Don't put anything on the schedule. Don't care that people are still bringing you meals at 2 months. Don't care. Like just pretend clutter makes you feel good. And then even that, like you're not going to feel like you don't have a newborn in your house until you're around 10 months postpartum or a year postpartum. Then you're going to start feeling more normal, but it takes that long. It takes a really long time. So these little like mental, I even write them down sometimes so that I can look at the timeline and just be like, I'm supposed to say this to myself at this time. I also excuse myself from thinking about traumatic things, like my traumatic birth or how I wish that person hadn't been there. If this didn't happen, then I would have this situation wouldn't have occurred. I don't let myself think about those things until I'm physically healed. So I make a list of all my feel-good movies that don't have any trauma in them. And I'm a big action movie person, so that means like no action movies at all. So like I'm watching a lot of Jane Austen or like Return to Me, Lark Rise Candleford, The Office, something like that.
And the more general principle here is that we all struggle with that sometimes. We want to ruminate and be anxious and worry about things either in the past or in the future. There is a proper time to think about and process and discuss those things. Oftentimes when we're we're feeling a tug to do that, it's not the time we should be doing it. We're thinking about those things when someone's talking to us, and we're busy ruminating on that. And so, as you said, you may prudently decide, you know what, this postpartum time, bonding with this baby, recovering, healing, this isn't the time necessarily to let myself spin off into those anxieties, especially not alone, which may be the tendency.
Yeah.
But make a decision about that.
Yeah. Like it's not that it's going to go unprocessed. I'm just not processing it right now.
Yeah.
That is not my place right now. It's not what I'm going to do. I also take a look at our bedroom and our living space. We did a really good job at this year. And I look at the places that I'm going to hate looking at for like 2 weeks. So we have overflowing changing table thing. So we replaced it with a dresser this time. Yeah. Or I hate nursing on the couch. Yeah, it's a great, comfortable couch, but it like makes me do this. So
we swapped out couches.
You can't lay down on it.
We worked on some some pinch points in our
so just like
our home.
Looking at things that you're already dreading. I'm gonna hate looking at this thing for 2 weeks. Well, maybe that just needs to be moved out of your room for 2 weeks, or maybe you need to problem solve a particular area. Another one, make sure you are prepared with people to bring you food. Accept a meal train. Ask a friend to do a meal train for you. I have done meal trains. I have organized meal trains for people across the country. Like it is very simple. You basically just need to give them a few answers to questions. If you want the answers to those questions, so you can ask someone about a meal train, like email me or comment or however, somehow we'll get it.
Give people that gift of allowing them, asking for their help, asking for their service in this physical, practical way. It's a great gift to somebody else to ask them to help you in that way.
This is going to be really specific.
Okay.
But around 2 months postpartum, like after your boobs kind of get normalized again. Sorry.
Just kidding. Sorry.
Chest areas. Wait, what are you hawing about?
Just being silly.
Okay. I buy myself a new bra, like a brand new nursing bra that fits well. And that can make you look in the mirror and feel like your normal self again. You're never going to be whatever the heck you think you were before, but like a bra can do a huge difference in your self-worth and your dignity. Yeah, he's like, oh, but no, I really think that that's always like one of my things. And again, just like this is your investment in your vocation. A lot of people get burned out. A lot of people struggle with mental things that they should never be struggling with. So invest in your vocation. This isn't just a push present. This is your ability to serve others into the future. So that's it.
Cool. Oh my gosh. So that was long. That was a lot of stuff. That was probably some stuff that made some people uncomfortable, other people
We should have given
upset.
a disclaimer.
Oh, we gave some disclaimers.
Sorry. Well, that was last episode. We gave them last episode.
But again, the point is, like we all, as couples and as families, have to discern and be prudent here. I mean, like, again, your scenario, your situation may look extremely different than ours, but you too are called to be prudent, just, courageous, and tempered. You're called to be virtuous. In whatever situation God's sending you, that is the raw material out of which he wants to build you into a saint. And so our goal here is just to give you some ideas, but hopefully most of all, just to give you some encouragement. Just keep going. God's with you. Work together as a team, as a couple. I don't think I have anything else to say. So thank you for joining us for this episode of Elevate Ordinary. Again, go to elevateordinary.com for more information about the show or to join our patron community, the Manor at St. Anne's. Download the Awaken app at theawakenapp.io. The best place to follow this and other shows from Awaken. Thank you again for persevering through this episode. God bless you. See you next time.
We need to stop ending every
on a positive
episode
note
like that.
See you next time. God bless.